Hello everybody, it's Larry and welcome to today's video where we're going to talk about the ethnicity estimates and we're going to compare them across the different companies. We're going to see that the same DNA test produces wildly different results, but yet they're the same. Stay tuned for that. Also stay tuned to the end of the video where we're going to be giving away a autosomal DNA test from one of the major companies. And I'm going to let you pick which one it is, because if you have Ancestry, you probably don't need another one of those. You probably want to test with 23andMe. If you have 23andMe, you probably want to test with Ancestry. Maybe you want to test with MyHeritage, FTDNA. So I'm going to let you pick which one you would like to do, and I'll tell you how at the end of the video. So we have a kind of an interesting, fun topic, one that I'm pretty sure that you've not looked at before. You're going to find this interesting. It's probably going to be something that's shared amongst some genealogy groups because there's going to be some good information in this, and you're definitely going to share it with your friends for no other reason than the giveaway. So here we go. So this is my Ancestry ethnicity report, and we've gone over this before, so I'm going to just do it real quickly. We got, England, Wales, 54%, Scottish, 24%, Scandinavian, 10, and 6, and then you have Germanic Europe at 6%. What is important here to note is in my very first DNA test, it had different results. As they refine their regions, then I get, different numbers, different areas. And so it shifted from some areas into these areas, and that, again, that's real important for what we're going to talk about. It's also important to know that this is everything I'm going to show you is from the exact same DNA test. The same raw data, the same numbers in the data file went to all the companies. So here we go. We're at MyHeritage, and in MyHeritage it says 98.9, basically 99%. From North and West Europe, England, basically the Isles there. Doesn't show anything here in the Scandinavian as far as the breakout. And it shows 1.1% Middle Eastern. Now, this is important. If you had tested with MyHeritage and had not tested with Ancestry or FTDNA or 23andMe or any of the other companies, and this was your ethnicity result, if I had gone that route in my story, I would be thinking that I'm 99% English and 1% Middle Eastern. And that would be MyHeritage. Now let's take a look. Again, this is the exact same DNA as we had here. Okay, and there is no Middle Eastern here. Let's look at, okay, you can tell I've been doing this for a while. I should make a blooper reel. I think y'all would really enjoy that. So here we have FTDNA. Again, the exact same DNA file. And it shows British Isles 82%, which included the Scott Ireland, which is about right. 6% Scandinavia, which was what it had on Ancestry prior to the update, where now it's got 10% for the Norwegian and the 6% for the Sweden. And it's got Eastern Europe 4%, and Ancestry shows a Germanic Europe, so that's not necessarily out of balance. And it shows Sephardic Jew. Now, the Sephardic Jew, it's really interesting that this, and I want to point this out. Look at the region. It's here, Spain, Portugal, Iberian Peninsula. Okay, Iberian Peninsula, Middle Eastern. What's that got to do with me, and where is it here? Well, I will point out that in my very first Ancestry report, I did have 1.3% Iberian Peninsula. That has gone away as they refined it and shoved that into here. So that tells us exactly how each one of them are doing it. So again, nothing here but used to be. Middle Eastern, Iberian Peninsula. Why is that? Southeast Cherokee DNA. Why it shows is Iberian, Middle Eastern on DNA test. Okay, this is a Reddit dealing with the 23andMe and stuff. People look at it and they're getting confused. Why is it showing as Iberian Peninsula and Middle Eastern? Well, how does that affect me? Well, let's look at the history. Islam took over Spain in 711 AD, and for almost 1,000 years they controlled that peninsula. The last of the strongholds in the Iberian Peninsula of Granada was handed over to Catholic monarchy of Spain in January of 1492. Later in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, as you're taught in school for the rhyme, and he came to the Caribbean. Okay, he never stepped foot in North America, so that's kind of an important note. He did, come over here to the Central America at one point. but he never stepped foot in North America. And it's also important to realize the timeline. And the reason I mention that is because we got a later video I'm planning to do that's important. So we have the Middle Eastern influence to here for 1,000 years. For 711 AD to 1492, this reflected this. So this area right here was influenced by these markers. These markers lived right here for 1,000 years between 711 and 1492. So because I have this marker, that tells me that I've got this marker in here between 711 and 1492. That's a pretty good deal. And FTDNA pinpoints it, and Ancestry used to pinpoint it. And again, that shows to here. So why is that? Well, let's look here. I have an ancestor, Wilson F. Taylor. And Wilson F. Taylor, according to the family, was Cherokee, full-blood Cherokee. And his son, David Dillon, was entitled to lands in Oklahoma. He was given, the paperwork. He needed to just sign them, and he had them. The family on several occasions asked him to do it. And again, for those that don't know, the Cherokee were offered money to move west, and a lot of them took the money and exchanged for that land and moved west. And they were paid an amount, actually per acre, much greater than what we paid France for the Louisiana Purchase for the lands that were in the east to leave and go to Oklahoma. A lot went to Oklahoma. Some did not want to leave and go to Oklahoma. So, that's for a different video, but, it is historically important to at least realize that part, that, some went and took the money and left. Others felt that it was wrong. It wasn't, the right people making the deals, et cetera, et cetera. Again, a different video. But the fact are, some went, some didn't, and some remained on the Qualla Reservation. And these people on the Qualla Reservation were tested to see if we could identify a marker, not we as me, but we as people, to identify a marker that would allow them to find their descendants. Here's a marker unique to us, and can we identify who is really part of this Indian nation? And they didn't find a particular marker, and they've not found that for any of the Native American Indian nations. They have found markers from different places of the world in a variety of different Indian nations, each one having their own unique, marker that was not indigenous to this continent, which then again creates some political controversies. We're not going into that, but it is important to note that the Iberian Peninsula marker was prevalent in those tested. Again, not getting into the political correctness of the test, was the samples, correctly done, the number that were done, et cetera, et cetera. You can find all of this on Google. Just Google Cherokee, Iberian Peninsula, and you'll get a ton of information on both sides of this. But the fact is, there were tests done, and those tested all showed up with this Iberian Peninsula marker. So let's look at this. If indeed, theoretically, Wilson F. Taylor was Cherokee, 100%, then that means David would be 50%, and Sarah would be 25, Dolly would be 12, Daniel would be half of that at 6, and I would be half of that at 3, if it divided equally for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations, when we know the DNA doesn't split like that. Now, somewhere along the line, we should see some consistencies. Now, my father, Larkin Brown, was dead before I ever met him, but his sister, my aunt, is alive, and her test shows Iberian Peninsula 8%. And that's real important because she shows 8%. She has a stronger marker than here. And than me, I show, according to Ancestry, less than that. Now, I show 8% on FTDNA. I show 1% of that Middle Eastern Iberian with MyHeritage. And ironically, when I first took the Ancestry test, I showed up at 1.3% on Ancestry, but they've refined my results and it's no longer there. It did show up at one point. Now, my wife's also showed Native American at between 1 and 3%, and now hers is gone. But my daughter's, who's a recombination of myself and my wife, does show the indigenous North Americas. So, does this mean that I have Cherokee? Well, no, it does not. But it does mean that there is another piece of evidence leaning towards that fact, because we have, historical documents from that period that say that, he was. We also have some census reports that show him being non-white, colored, but that I can't remember the exact term, but it wasn't Negro in the census reports. It was colored, which was often in the reference to Indians, or non-white. And then, you have that division. So you'd expect me to be a low percentage, somewhere between, 1 and 8%. And so that's what we get. We get a 1% Middle Eastern there. We get an 8% there. We used to have a 1.3% there. And that's probably what my daughter has. If I looked at it exactly, I think it's probably that on the recombination. So again, probably Southeast Cherokee through the Qualla. And the only reason I know that is because I studied this. I know that Spain was controlled by Islam for all that time. So what that means is the Middle Eastern influence was actually right here. It shows in their marker, hey, Middle Eastern, so it circles this region, but it just tells me that when Spain was controlled for, almost 1,000 years by those from the Middle East, then that had that influence. And then here it shows it in that reference. So knowing that, I say, okay, I know that Spain was controlled from here. I know that the Spanish Portuguese supposedly integrated with the Iroquois of New York to form, the Cherokee, the Southeast Cherokees. And then they split. Some went to Oklahoma, some stayed there in the Qualla, some were forcibly removed to Trail of Tears. Each had, a different history. But it's important to know this part of world history in order to understand my ethnicity results. If I had just taken an DNA test with FTDNA and I see this, I get one picture of my background. If I had taken it and stopped here, I get one picture of my background. If I take it here and I stop, I get one picture of my background. But it's not until I study the history of the world that I actually get a full idea of the Islam in Spain. So I had the Islam or Middle Eastern influence in Spain, which is why I have the Middle East in one result. I have the Spain, Portugal in one result. Used to have it here, but now it's been refined over by Ancestry. So if you have again, I want to point out, this is the exact same DNA test. This isn't 3 different tests that went to different companies and they each put, their own little, flavor on it or tested it differently. This is the same raw data. This is the same file downloaded from Ancestry, uploaded to MyHeritage, uploaded to FTDNA to get these results that you see. They're wildly different in the way they look, and they give me a wildly different impression of my ethnicity. But if I know the history of the world, it actually helps me to determine, hey, is this right? Is some of my family history right? Because when I look and I see, okay, was Wilson F. Taylor really Cherokee? And I look here and say, okay, Cherokee show the Iberian and Middle Eastern, and I got the Iberian and Middle Eastern, then it does give me some evidence that it is likely that those stories, those documents, historical documents, that is indeed the case. Again, there's no accepted proof for becoming a member of the Cherokee Nation other than the Dawes rolls, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find out what is my ethnicity. Now it also gives us an insight to each of the companies on what they're doing. So let's go back just a little bit here. We know that in 1492, okay, then the Spanish Portuguese influence over here on the Cherokee, but 1492 is when Columbus left here, and I've got the Spain Portugal Iberian Peninsula on FTDNA. So we can say, okay, 1492 and after, Spain Portugal is identified here. MyHeritage goes a little further back, beyond 1492 to 711, because before 711 they didn't have that influence here. So sometime after 700 AD and to roughly 1500 is where MyHeritage does their ethnicity seeding. Again, FTDNA does it after the 1500, so they're at the 1500. Ancestry is actually going beyond that. Okay, they don't have the Middle Eastern influence. They don't have the Iberian Peninsula influence. Theirs is actually tracking further back, further back. Not just, let's say I had some European ancestors and they were in this area in 1492. FTDNA shows them Iberian Peninsula. The MyHeritage showed them as being Middle Eastern, from the Middle Eastern influence. And Ancestry shows no, they're Germanic, or, since the other tests showed Germanic, and it's not necessarily there, we have 6% Scandinavian. They don't have Scandinavian at all. So we can kind of infer that maybe there was a Scandinavian influence. Well, what do we know about the history of the world there? We know that the Vikings, they went into France, and they also went down into this area. And so, the influx there. So you basically, what it's saying is you've got these markers that could actually have all been up here in the Vikings, came down into this area, into the Iberian Peninsula. One company has tested and identified them up to here. Another company has tested and left the marker right here in this area. And the other tested and said, oh, they're in this area. We identify it as this marker. So we've got one story of the world, one ancestry thing. And so we've got the exact same data interpreted 3 different ways, but it's a way to look at the history of the world. And the ethnicities, if you look at them, be very careful that you don't just look at one ethnicity report and go, oh, looky here, I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm something totally different. You have to match it with your family tree to find out where it is. And, I've got a lot of, Scott-Irish, McCarter, Collins Fitzhugh, the English, the French right here with Bouchelon, definitely French. 20, that's Germany. That was 100% Germany. They were from Eberhard Twinley, from Germany. So, I've got those influences, the Germanic influences. They don't show there. They're on my tree, and they show up, but maybe more towards the Eastern Europe. So be careful to say, hey, I've got this ethnicity report, and I'm this percent Middle Eastern, 1.1%. I'm this percent Spanish or Portuguese, or from Ukraine or Norway, or maybe here I'm 24% Scott-Irish. You have to be careful on those, because these are pictures. They're pictures into your history, and each one of the companies looking at the exact same result, and because of their seed data and the way they're interpreting that seed data, are looking at it and say, here's the snapshot at different periods of history. But then again, knowing that can give you some great insights as to your true ethnicity. It can also, if you can overlay migratory patterns, you can find out some really good insights about your family history, family story, and maybe even make some breakthroughs because you'll know where to look. Okay, if I was looking over the Middle East for my history, I can be thrown off. So if I was here and saying, oh, I've got the Middle East, and I'm searching in this area for information, I'm going to get lost because my background isn't really here. It was really from the Iberian Peninsula, which was identified here. But this Iberian Peninsula, looking at the ancestry data, looks to have maybe been an influx from this region coming down into this region, and this region is being interpreted by the 2 different companies as that area or the Middle Eastern area, because they controlled that area for 1,000 years. All right, a lot of information was covered there. You may have to watch the video a couple of times to fully understand it, but the important thing to note is, like here, it says the Cherokee Indian shows Iberian and Middle Eastern. You got the Iberian, you got the Middle Eastern, and you've got the family member, story with the Taylor, who Wilson of Taylor was supposedly 100% Cherokee, which, showing the Iberian Peninsula and the Middle Eastern probably was. Again, no proof. And again, I really want to caution you again about using ethnicities as a determination. There is no test by any Native American nation that you can do a DNA test and say you're part of that nation, because there's not a unique marker. Okay, now that gets into a whole world of political controversy, which I don't plan to go into with you, but there's not an identifiable marker. It's not a unique, like the French or the Scott-Irish, that I can say, okay, here's this marker. If you test this, you have it. Now, I can say that, a predominant number, most if not all, from that southeast band of Cherokee that were tested, all that were tested, show the Iberian Peninsula, which has the Middle Eastern influence. They all showed that. But just because somebody shows that, a person could live here in Spain, and they could have lived there their entire life with the same mixture of different nationalities as their ancestors, and lived here, never having stepped foot on this continent, or any of their ancestors set foot on this continent. We meet up, we test, and we show the same markers, and maybe the same Iberian Peninsula and the same Middle Eastern, markers, but they've never been here, so they couldn't have been part of a Native American nation because they don't have any ancestry here. You have to pair it with the ancestry of a particular ancestor along with this in order to kind of formulate whether it took place. All right, so you saw me pop that up. Let's get that back up here. That's why you've been staying and listening to me ramble there. Here we have the 23andMe Ancestry Traits and Service, the $99. That's their base one. And then, of course, the one from Ancestry is also $99 right now. And so what we're going to do is in the comments below, I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to say, which DNA kit would you like to win if you win? And I want you to respond with either the Ancestry or the 23andMe. Now, if you've got both of those and you want to do a MyHeritage for whatever reason, you can also put in the MyHeritage. But I would recommend you do one of the two, big ones. And the reason is Ancestry, you can download the data and upload like I did to MyHeritage, FTDNA, and some other sites. And if you get 23andMe, you can do the same thing. But 23andMe does not upload to Ancestry. Ancestry does not upload to 23andMe. So if you've got a test taken by one of those two companies, this is your opportunity to win the other one and have a complete list of all the DNA matches that you can possibly get. Also get the extra interpretation of the ethnicity results and some of the other tools. Now, the MyHeritage, when you upload it, if you want to look at the ethnicity, that is an extra charge. If you upload your DNA to FTDNA to look at the ethnicity, that is a different charge. But you do get to see the matches from both of these companies, your DNA matches, for free if you have a 23andMe or AncestryDNA kit that you download and upload to those sites. So I'm going to put the comment down there asking which one you'd like to receive. Again, it's I really recommend it. You do the Ancestry or the 23andMe. So let me know whether you'd like that, the base 23andMe kit or the base Ancestry kit without all the the extras, the base kit. And this wouldn't be possible without the supporters of Patreon. So I have to say thank you to all of you who are supporting us on Patreon. Without you, these videos wouldn't still be going. And if you're not a member of Patreon, please consider going over to Patreon, signing up. It's support of just a couple of dollars a month means a lot. And after a period of time, we're able to give back to you just like we're doing here. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Pass it around to your friends. If for no other reason, tell them to go to the end and watch it and click and the comment and maybe win a free DNA test. We are going to do the contest until November 1st. So we don't have very much time in this one. So on November 1st at noon, I'm going to draw the winner of this thing. And so you have to have your comments in before that time. And then, to have a chance to win, just comment and respond to my comment which one of the tests you'd like to do. You have to do it before November 1st. And again, I tell you, maybe you don't want to give it to all your friends because then they'll be signing up and you have less of a chance to win. Well, this is going to be really interesting to see. Will this have like almost no views as nobody tells anybody about it? Or will this video get lots of views as we find out that people do have kind hearts and they pass it around to their friends and give them the opportunity to win it too? That's really going to be interesting. We can all kind of watch for that result. Anyway, so this is Larry. I appreciate you listening. We passed the 5,000 subscriber marks. In fact, we passed the 5,100 mark. You guys are so awesome. And again, thank you to those people that are supporting on Patreon. Without you, none of this would be going on right now. Anyway, have a great week. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you later. Bye.